to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me, as of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
On January 20th, 2025, on his first day in office, President Donald Trump signed an executive order ordering the immediate withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement and other international climate commitments. He also ordered the United States' withdrawal from the World Health Organization. He created the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, issued approximately 1,500 pardons to individuals charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and reinstated Cuba on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. During his whirlwind first weeks in office, Trump has signed approximately 76 executive orders. This willingness to govern by decree reflects his conviction that he has been elected by the people to make America great again. But is Trump governing in that direction? What constitutes greatness in the United States? Are Trump's decisions preparing the US to become a greater and more appreciated country in the world, or the opposite? That's what we're going to examine. Hello human! Welcome to a short documentary by Marginal Media. Almost 8 years ago, we presented a video to you on the occasion of President Trump's first 100 days in office.
I thought it would be easier. I thought it was more of a...
In an interview with Reuters granted for this occasion, the president declared that his workload was greater than expected and that he missed his previous life. We discovered that despite having promised during his campaign that he would lock himself in the White House to work and that he would never be seen playing golf like his predecessor Obama, he had spent a third of those first 100 days outside the White House, in one of his luxury residences, and many of them, yes, playing golf. Trump then watched 5 hours of TV a day. It was known which programs he watched because he tweeted about them daily. Some politicians took advantage of these programs to directly address the president and request an audience. It was easier for the president to pay attention to them through television than by following the established protocol for being received. In other words, when it came to governing, the president was, to say the least, lazy, just as his personal biographer described him. If you try to remember anything Trump did during his first term, you might only think of his final tantrum when he found himself out of office and incited his followers to storm the Capitol.
We have some very bad people over there. It was weaponized.
Now, this Trump is different. Barely 2 months into his presidency, Trump has already turned his country and half the world upside down with his decisions. What has changed? His attitude and his learning. During his first term, he tiptoed around with no more shock than his denial of the pandemic and his oddities, like someone who, while believing he deserved the office for life, knows he is occupying a job with a temporary 4-year contract, which is exactly what happened. Not this time. This time his commitment to governing is total. He doesn't want a job. Trump wants a kingdom, as he's already been saying. He wants to be a Tsar like Putin, for whom he has repeatedly expressed admiration, the only ruler of consequence to remain in power since the last century. Trump's mission is to make the United States a kingdom, with himself as its monarch. That's what he really means when he talks about making America great again, and the experience of his first term has helped him identify those he perceives as his enemies. Those individuals, organizations, ideas, and movements that he believes cost him his job, then, are the ones he's now trying to suppress. This Trump has a passion for controlling power and a fire of vengeance to exact. That's the difference between the first Trump and the second. The question is this Trump going to make his country bigger and stronger? Let's look at his actions, both inside and outside its borders. Domestically, Trump has created the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, headed by Elon Musk, which is dismantling American public service and installing sycophants instead of professionals, while his social media company X is broadcasting ads from real neo-Nazis. Can you imagine the richest man in the world working for public service? No one becomes the richest man in the world by putting the public interest first. No one. What Elon Musk is really doing is following the playbook of what is known as state capture. Under the guise of maximizing government efficiency and productivity, Elon Musk and his DOGE have infiltrated US government offices in recent weeks and have amassed considerable power. Among other things, they have penetrated the massive system responsible for virtually all government payments. They have breached confidential databases and private medical records. They have circumvented routine conflict of interest and transparency requirements. They have dismantled the United States Agency for International Development. They have gained access to the computer systems of several federal agencies. Musk's blitzkrieg in Washington has not only created confusion and uncertainty for tens of thousands of American public officials, it has also violated numerous federal laws. It is a takeover of digital infrastructure by an unelected group seeking to dismantle democratic practices and violate human rights. This appropriation of state resources by political actors for their own purposes, whether private or political, is what state capture means. First, political and corporate elites gain control of formal institutions, information systems, and bureaucratic policy-making processes. They then use this power to selectively enforce rules, make biased decisions, and allocate resources based on private interests rather than the common good. It's curious that those who come to power promising to defeat the elites are rapidly building their own. Will Trump and Musk's attack on the federal bureaucracy improve the lives of Americans?
We are here today as elected members of Congress.
The most immediate impact of state capture is worse decision-making. By purging experienced officials, canceling government contracts, and accessing sensitive information systems, Musk's actions will likely degrade the quality of life at home and endanger the lives of Americans abroad. State capture also means less accountability for the Trump administration's public policy decisions. In the absence of independent and congressional oversight, key decisions about the distribution of economic benefits could be made informally behind closed doors. Finally, state capture is inextricably linked to corruption. Doing business with the US federal government may soon require a loyalty test rather than a public interest test. Those Trump considers enemies will face more obstacles, while his allies will have a seat at the table. And we've already begun to see that from the first day Trump entered the White House. The FBI is led by Kash Patel, who promoted bogus COVID-19 vaccine reversal therapies and wrote children's books portraying Trump as a monarch. The agency is already busily investigating Trump's enemies. The Department of Health and Human Services is led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vaccine denier, just as Americans have begun dying from measles for the first time in a decade. And American medical and health research has been channeled into ideologically approved topics. At the Pentagon, in a stunning act of self-sabotage, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has ordered U.S. Cyber Command to halt all operations targeting Russia, and cuts to funding for the United States Agency for International Development are destroying America's soft power, creating a vacuum that China will gladly fill. Other Western donors are likely to cut their aid as well, so they can invest more in their militaries in response to American unilateralism.
And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
Turning to the international arena, the embarrassing images of Trump, along with his attack dog, Vice President Vance, in the Oval Office, still fresh in our minds, attempting to publicly humiliate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the democratically elected leader of a nation invaded by a rapacious imperialist aggressor named Putin, are still fresh in our minds. And all because Zelensky refused to sign a surrender agreement, criticized Putin, who has tried to assassinate him numerous times, and refused to bow down to Trump, the country's self-proclaimed king. The worst part is that Trump has already normalized his clumsy and abusive behavior. The president has opened the Overton window, the spectrum of topics politically acceptable to the public, wide open. His erratic and oppressive chatter will serve as an example to millions of citizens. Trump is not a politician who understands diplomacy. He is a businessman who needs to feel like he's winning every negotiation. And in his vision as a businessman, There's no room for an international order that, according to him, conspires against the interests of the United States. This is paradoxical, because it is in this international order that America has risen to prominence. His vision of order consists of the overwhelming display of technological, military, or economic force, with which it threatens without restraint. How can Trump make his country great abroad when he attacks his partners and supplicates to his much weaker enemies? As for the conflict in Ukraine, one day Zelensky is a dictator rejected by the Ukrainian people. The next day, it's Ukraine and by extension the European Union that provoked Russia's invasion. Then comes the warning that trying to get Ukraine to recover territory occupied by Russian troops is not realistic. As the Secretary of Defense clarified, Greenland, Panama, and even Canada have been warned of the American president's wishes. The European Union, Trump has said, was created to harm the United States, so imposing a 25% tariff on all European products is the least Europe deserves. Ukraine is given no security guarantees, but its valuable rare earths are seized in astronomical quantities to pay for the military aid it has received from Washington. Trump warned, anyone who doesn't pay can be attacked by Russia with impunity, and Putin isn't one to miss opportunities. Will this strategy help restore US greatness? The devastating effects of Trump's actions are already having global repercussions. The United States vote against a UN General Assembly resolution condemning Russia for starting the war against Ukraine placed it in an unimaginable position, alongside the other 17 countries that voted not to condemn Russia, alongside countries like Russia, of course, Belarus, North Korea, Nicaragua, Sudan, Eritrea, the cream of the crop of totalitarianisms on the planet. Even China refused to be part of this group. Are these going to be Trump's new allies? In the United Kingdom, a YouGov survey of more than 5,000 participants revealed that 48% of Britons considered supporting Ukraine more important than maintaining good relations with the United States. Only 20% favored supporting the United States over Ukraine. Trump's cronyism with Putin and Russia already has a name, the reverse Kissinger strategy, a reference to the United States' role in exacerbating the Sino-Soviet divide during the Cold War. Trump wants to force a Russian withdrawal from China, an extreme illusion so vain that it must have Putin cackling in the Kremlin corridors every night. Putin would have to be completely incompetent to contemplate a withdrawal from Beijing. He has invested a lot of time and effort in improving this relationship, believing that China will be the dominant power of the 21st century. Putin would be even more foolish if he accepted the United States as a full partner. That would turn Russia's unpopulated southern border with China, which stretches 4,300 kilometers, into the potential front line of a new Cold War. Finally, there are the tariffs, which are already having an impact both inside and outside the United States. Stock markets around the world are collapsing just like the 2008 financial crisis, when the only crisis in the markets is not knowing which foot Trump is going to get out of bed with each morning. The most common explanation for his behavior is that it evokes the isolationism of one of his ideological idols, former US President Andrew Jackson. Trump's goal appears to be to isolate American companies with high tariffs while trying to separate Russia from its relationship with China. These arguments are both economically illiterate and geopolitically absurd. Even a superficial understanding of tariffs reveals that they drive inflation because they are paid by importers who then pass the costs on to consumers. Over time, they are little more than sugar pills that make economies diabetic, increasingly dependent on state protections in the face of endless trade wars. In short, Trump is distancing himself from his long-time trading and military partners, believing he can dictate the government of his allies as dependent counties of his great American kingdom. The more countries around the world adapt to living without the United States, the more difficult it will be for the United States to adapt to living without its allies, those who once considered America great. The greatness of the United States is based on two basic tenets of its constitutional legacy. The first is that there is a just order and that this order is created by the consent of equal individuals. In rights, all of them. This concept is the central idea of the Declaration of Independence of July 4, 1776, which, in the opinion of the vast majority of American historians and constitutionalists, constitutes the primary document of the United States national identity. Many of the executive orders Trump has issued are of more than dubious constitutionality. The suppression of birthright citizenship or diversity, equity, and inclusion measures, for example. The second tenets allude to the idea that, to ensure the prevailing justice, happiness, and peace, as well as the liberties and rights of those who make up the community, it is essential that all powers, legislative, executive, and judicial, never be concentrated in a single supreme authority. With his executive orders, Trump is subjecting the judiciary to a severe test of strength, and whoever is doing so already shows confidence in emerging victorious. Donald Trump is dragging the United States into an unprecedented constitutional crisis. Never before has the Republic embarked on paths so far removed from its founding legacy. Is this the path to making America great again? What do you think? Leave us your comment. Until next time, peace.